Welcome, Ruth. It's a long way from the Isle of Skye, but a pleasure to have you with us at West Hill Lodge to reflect on your very personal life story in the pictures that surround us. We know that the meaning to us lies in understanding how and why you made the journey.
The paintings really developed from a time in my life when I was suffering a lot of pain. It was a kind of crisis time in my life. And I had a counsellor at the time who encouraged me to express this. So they started out as charcoal drawings, really for me to find out what was going on in my heart and what my deepest feelings were. So they were really very much for me to start with. They weren't something that I ever intended to share with other people.
We know that your original understanding of what was happening to you started in a series of drawings. In the drawings there seems to be an intimacy in the simplicity of putting pencil to paper. It was 5 years later before the drawings developed into paintings. Looking back, how important are the drawings to you?
I had never tried to draw from the feelings that I had within me. I had always drawn things outside me before. I'd drawn portraits and landscapes. So the process of discovering a kind of inner world and trying to express that was very exciting. When I'd finished one drawing, I didn't know how long I would wait until the next one came. Sometimes 3 came together, and sometimes I would finish a drawing and then I would have a dream, and in my dream I would know what the next one would be. So they had their own energy that kind of carried me along at the time, and I think they come from a very deep place in my unconscious.
Ruth, we know that you find it helpful to view your paintings in 3 parts. The earlier pictures are all about coming alive. The middle section is about the roller coaster ride of the journey of faith. And the last section, how the joy and pain that you have experienced come together in a powerful and meaningful way.
I only divided them into 3 parts after I had started showing them to other people, because I discovered through various experiences that things that were in my life were also shared by other people, and other people could understand them. So through quite a long process, I got the courage to show them to other people, and I used them mostly as meditations with a lot of silence, because they're very hard to take in all at once, 19 pictures. So I found that if I divided them into 3 parts, people had more time to think their own thoughts and make their own connections with them.
Perhaps before we look at coming alive, we could share that moment with you when the whalebone was cast upon the shore.
Yes, what happened, how I found the vertebra was, I went to the island of Iona, which has always been a really healing place for me. And I was walking on the shore below where the abbey stands, and my foot kicked something. And I picked it up, and it was the bone. And I had a feeling as I picked it up that I wanted to keep it, and it was somehow a special thing for me. So, and when I started to draw, I felt that I needed a real thing to look at to get me started. So I used that bone as an eye to look at my inner self. Right away I thought, this is a really beautiful shape.
It's tactile.
And
fingers in it.
I want to keep it. And then when I started to make the drawings, I thought I will use this bone as an eye to look through at what's happening.
It is of course a challenge to us to take in the significance of all the pictures at once. Let us look in more detail at coming alive. It seems that the first 3 pictures are about bringing breath back into your life. But is the strongest feeling here that of, say, reincarnation? And where in the later picture, where holding the flame of life in your hands, you will make the declaration, I will not die an unlived life. Is this the light that starts to shine through the darkness?
Yes. At that stage, the bone actually turned into a womb. And I think the painting was influenced by a sculpture that stands in the cloisters in Iona. And in this sculpture, the whole thing is a womb, and the dove of the Spirit is descending into the room and Mary is inside. But in my picture, the light is coming upwards, so the energy is going a different way from the sculpture. That was a real starting point for me.
Your Mother Ruth painting is perhaps one of the more difficult for people to understand. Can you help us?
I think maybe I could help you to understand it by explaining what happens in a Quaker meeting. Quakers worship in silence, and when we join together in silence, we're waiting for the Holy Spirit to speak. And then when you sit in that silence, your spirit sort of calms down. And then if you sit for long enough, you can get really deep down into the place which I always think of as being in my stomach, where it's below your thoughts and your feelings, and it's the place where God can speak to you. So in the Mother Ruth painting, she's holding this flame deep within her, and it's connected to the earth underneath, and it's coming right through her body and giving her strength and a kind of rootedness that will allow her to look at the difficult things in her life, because without that experience of rootedness and of being loved, you can't actually look at the parts of yourself that you don't like. You would just shut them away because it would be too difficult. So she has to be there in that place.
Planted firmly on the ground.
Yes.
So you described the final picture of coming alive as liberating.
The way I was brought up, I had an image of a gentle Jesus, meek and mild, and so being angry was not nice. And the trouble is, if you do not allow yourself to feel anger, when you feel it, it turns in on you, it doesn't go away, and it becomes depression. So I discovered during the process of doing the 3 pictures, the shadow self, stand up, and holy anger, that there were a lot of things in my life that I was angry about, and it was all right to be angry, and that was a liberation.
Looking forward, we see a journey that can only be seen or felt as a roller coaster ride. We understand from the outset that there are 2 people here, the strong woman, not to be argued with, and the inner self, full of doubts. Can you recall more about the doubts and certainties in getting launched into the flight into the night?
In the painting, Pushing the Boat Out, it's really a kind of impossible painting in a way. There's this very strong person launching a boat into 20-foot waves, and the small blue person really doesn't want to go. But they have the cross with them, and they have the orange sail of the resurrection, and the strong woman is determined that they will go. What this was really an experience of was that in order to change my life, I felt I had to physically move from one place to another, and I decided to go and live for a while in a large community. So the small blue person had a lot of fear of what that would be like, leaving the security of home and family and living with some of the most broken and poorest people in the world, in a way giving up control over what would happen to me. But actually it turned out to be a time in my life that was one of the richest, and a time when I felt the most loved.
I know you've had some uncomfortable moments with the sad and painful picture of the dying child.
The dying child painting really surprised me, because what I imagined would happen would be that the strong woman and the small blue woman would lie down in the boat, wrap themselves up in the sail and go to sleep. It would be a kind of reconciliation that would happen. And I began to draw, and I realised that the lines wouldn't work, and the lines became harder and more painful. And then I realised that the child was going to die and that the boat was turning into a coffin. But then the next picture, which was Born Again, is full of joyfulness, and the child that's reborn is different. She's not a small blue frightened person anymore. She's quite a strong cheeky child, quite a naughty wee child actually. And there's the immense blessing on the woman and the child. So when the child was reborn, I knew where they were going to go, which was the beginning of creation, which is also really the beginning of me. And so I really enjoyed making the drawing and trying to imagine how the beginning of creation would be. These great swirls that I made in the sky are kind of my imagining what the creative act might be. Both the child and the woman are now dressed in the orange sail of resurrection, and for the first time they're working together, they're rowing together, so they're no longer at war with each other. So that was a really joyful feeling in that picture. The child painting is really about living in the L'Arche community. And although there was a lot of pain and a lot of rawness there, we found that we could really enjoy each other's company and play a lot, rediscovering the joys of playing. We painted eggs together, we made candles, we decorated cakes, and we had wonderful celebrations with lots of light and colour. And when you live with people with very few words, things like light and colour and song become really important. I think the child is learning to use all the stuff of life. This volcanic soil that's in the picture is actually the volcanic soil of anger and rawness and pain and suffering. But she's playing with it. And I think that was what I was discovering. It is possible to still play.
As we move to the last section, the power of joy and sorrow, we also begin to see self-portraits. The poignant and touching The Ordinary Miracle is followed by joy and sorrow flowing together. The picture came from a dream by a river, but also by now you had travelled so far and experienced so much.
I think I had a feeling that I would eventually paint a picture where joy and sorrow would flow together. There's a sort of blessing that happens when you live with people who are in pain. And there's a song which we used to sing in L'Arche which starts, "By the hungry I will feed you, by the poor I make you rich, by the broken I will mend you, tell me which one is which." And this was the feeling of that experience of the communion. The cup and the bread in the picture is the cup of relationships between us and God. And it's a broken cup because our relationships with each other are broken. We can never love each other the way we want to, and we can never love God the way we want to. So it's a broken cup. But out of this broken cup flows joy and sorrow, which comes together, and I tried to paint the joy and sorrow flowing together into the pure light of eternity. When I painted joy and sorrow, I really thought it was the last painting. I thought, that's it complete. And I was a wee bit sad because the journey had carried me as I was doing it. And then I had another dream. And I thought, of course, it's not the end. The last picture is a really old woman and a dance. And the really old woman, she's actually in a real place. It's one of the few paintings that are set in a real place. There's a place on the west coast of Skye that gets so battered by the sea winds that the trees bend over almost double. And there she is naked in this wind, and everything that she's had to give has been given, but she's holding out her bowl, and towards her is dancing an angel. And the angel is filling up her bowl with pure light. And after I'd painted it, I was thinking about a friend of mine who died and who said to me, "Don't let them put rest in peace on my gravestone. I intend to be really busy after I die." So the end of life is also a dance.
Living Life by Ruth Goodheir is part of West Hill Endowment's touring exhibition programme, Create Talk. For more information about the availability of our exhibition resources, please contact West Hill Endowment at www.westhillendowment.org or email us at info@westhillendowment.org or telephone us on 0121 472 8000.